Is former UFC champion Jose Aldo making the right decision coming out of retirement and returning at UFC 301? That is what we're going to discuss in today's video. My name is James Lynch. So I'm out yesterday with my kid. We're out doing a bunch of stuff, and I see this notification on my phone that Jose Aldo going to be returning at UFC 301, ending his retirement. Of course, he hasn't really been retired. He's been retired from MMA, but he's been doing boxing, so it's not like he's been on the couch since the last time we saw him in the UFC. But here are just some of my initial thoughts, my reaction to hearing the news. First and foremost, this didn't surprise me at all. If you're part of my Discord on Patreon, we have a few like insiders in there, and they were talking about Aldo potentially returning, and so this was something I was kind of figuring was going to happen. And honestly, when Aldo retired after his loss to Merab Dvalishvili, I kind of felt like it was a bit premature. Like he just lost to Merab, who we now know is amazing and will likely be fighting. Let's hope he's fighting for the bantamweight title next. So it's not like he's in a state of, say, like Chuck Liddell or, you know, a handful of fighters, Tony Ferguson, that are, you know, continuously losing and not looking competitive in any of their fights. So I understand that perspective as well. But I can't help but think, and I don't want people to call me the old man on the lawn sort of yelling here, but why wasn't this fight added to UFC 300? This would have been a perfect fight for UFC 300. You know, UFC 300 was supposed to have, you know, these sort of like unique, you know, fun fights. I mean, how much of a big fight would this have been doing Jose Aldo and say Dominic Cruz on UFC 300? That would have been a big boost to the card. I'm not saying UFC 300 is a bad card, but this is the type of fight that I think could have really helped out UFC 300. And look, I know UFC 301's in a bit of trouble right now. I talked about this yesterday in my video with Alexander Pantoja and Steve Erceg headlining the card. That's going to be a tough sell. This will certainly help, but I do wonder, was it considered ever putting Aldo on UFC 300? Because I think that would have been an even bigger and more intriguing fight on that card than on this one. Yes, I know Aldo's from Brazil. I'm sure he would love to fight, you know, in his home country as opposed to going and fighting in Vegas. But I do wonder if that was a bit of a missed opportunity as well. And I mentioned Dominic Cruz, like, you know, fighting Jonathan Martinez, I totally understand that from the UFC's perspective. Martinez has looked great. He's been on a bit of a winning streak here, right? He's won, what, 6 in a row? And even overall, I mean, the Uwolf fight I thought should have gone the other way. Sukumta was his debut, which I think was on short notice. And then he was beating Davy Grant and then got knocked out in that fight. So Martinez is well-deserved of an opportunity like this. Again, I get it from the UFC's perspective, where if Martinez wins, that, you know, blows up his stock in the weight class, and he's someone they can start building around because he's really exciting to watch, Jonathan Martinez, right? So I sort of get it from that perspective. And I also get it from the perspective of, you know, who's available, right? There might not be many fighters available, but a reason I bring up Dominic Cruz is like, that's a fight that has never happened. That's between two legends, right? In Aldo and Cruz being the former bantamweight champion as well, Aldo being the former featherweight champion. Like, why didn't they think of putting that fight together? And listen, if Cruz is retired, which I think he is, we haven't heard an official announcement yet, get him out of the rankings. He's number 11. When was the last time Cruz even fought? I want to say it was it Cheeto? Was the Cheeto fight the last time he fought? And that seems like it was ages ago. When was it? Yeah, 2022. What's going on here? If I've said this before, if you have been out of the rankings for more than a year, injury or not, you should be taken out of the rankings. You're holding up space. That number 11 spot should be going to someone else, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, anyways, that's a whole other video in itself, but that's the fight I would have loved to have seen on UFC 300. Dominic Cruz, Jose Aldo, people would have gone nuts. Again, two fighters who haven't fought each other. That would have been a lot of fun, but that's just a minor thing. And then, you know, let's say they did put the fight on UFC 300. You move one of the Brazilians to UFC 301 to boost that up. So there's a couple options. Again, we're talking hypotheticals here. I'm just talking in a perfect world. This is what I would have liked to have seen. You could have easily moved Davison Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt to UFC 301. That would have been a fun fight. Or you could have moved Jalen Turner and Renato Moicano to Brazil as well. So for those saying that like, oh, this card needed a big fight like this, you could have moved either of those two fights, and I think fans still would have been happy. So that's all I'm saying there as well. But again, the only part that sort of surprised me was that they went with Martinez. I figured they might have gone with a bigger name. Here's another name I'll throw at you that I think they could have done, and they actually have the same management. Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, again, I know Umar's probably going to end up fighting Corey Sandhagen, and obviously that's a bigger fight for him in the division. But would you have not liked to have seen, you know, Umar really, you know, have a legend on his resume like fighting Jose Aldo? You know, that would have been cool to see. So that's another thing that I wonder if that was considered at all. I know Umar just fought, but maybe Aldo was like adamant about fighting on UFC 301, but I still think that could have been a cool fight too. Because again, that doesn't affect Corey, because there's some school of thought that Corey shouldn't have to fight Umar because Corey took the Rob Font fight. Yeah, anyways, that's a whole thing in itself. So that's kind of my initial thoughts. Like, I like the fight. I think it's going to be entertaining. It's definitely going to be a fight of the night, and I think Aldo certainly still has a lot left. Like I said, he's not just been sitting on the couch. His last fight was against Merab, which we know everyone loses to Merab, and then he had 3 boxing fights. I don't know too much about these other opponents. Jeremy Stephens was a rematch that ended up going into a draw, but Aldo obviously finished Stephens at the UFC Calgary card a few years ago. So again, he's been active. He's been in there. But the issue here is Aldo's 37 and he's coming back and he's looking to make a run. I don't really know what his plans are. I don't know how many fights he has left in his contract. So my verdict of this, to answer my own question in this video, is this the right move for Aldo? I don't think it is. I don't think it's going to go well for him in terms of when he gets to those higher caliber opponents. Now, look, I mentioned there that Aldo was not looking bad when he retired at the time. That was back in 2021 was his last fight in the cage. Sorry, 2022. So we're about almost 2 years removed. Coming up to 2 years that he last fought. That's still 2 years is a lot for a fighter who's 37. You know, I do wonder as he moves up the rankings, if we look at it here, you know, fighting like a Cheeto Vera. I mean, he beat Cheeto already. He probably beats him. Piotr Jan, does he beat a Piotr Jan? I don't know. Jan beat him the first time. It was a later finish, right? When was that loss? That was in 2020. It was a late finish there. I don't know if Aldo beats him there. I don't think he beats Corey Sandhagen. Sterling, again, what are we doing here? Is Sterling staying at bantamweight or not? If he's permanently going to stay at featherweight, take him out of the rankings too. But even a Sterling-Aldo fight, I think, would be interesting. And honestly, that's the fight we should have had, was Sterling and TJ Dillashaw. You remember that when Dillashaw fought injured and just basically wasted the fight for everyone. That should have been Aldo getting that opportunity, but that's another topic for another day. And then Merab, I think, would beat him. And O'Malley, I think, has a good chance too, because O'Malley, you know, he's got power. And we've seen Aldo get finished a number of times over his career. So I think O'Malley, there's a possibility of maybe finishing him. We'll see. But like kind of what I mean by this is, like, yes, I think Aldo has a possibility of beating Jonathan Martinez. I'll talk about that in a sec here too. But from there, where does he go? Like, what big fights are there? Like, I even wonder if like a Cejudo would move up. Like, I'm just trying to think here. Like, I can't imagine. I'm sure from Aldo's perspective, the goal is to try and win the bantamweight title. But you're in a division that's already has a bunch of contenders waiting in the wings. You've got Sandhagen, you got Merab. You've also got Umar out there too, sort of the wild card here. Like, it's not going to be easy for him to get a title shot. And if it's not a title shot, then why aren't you just doing fun, like, veteran fights? Like, Martinez doesn't really fit that bill. To me, it's like Martinez, I think the UFC views this as, well, if Aldo loses to Martinez, this will be a big win for Martinez and we can promote him. If Aldo wins, then hey, he just beat a really hungry guy on a big win streak. We'll get him closer to a title shot. So it kind of messes up the division, him being back. But like I said, like, I don't think he'll be champion again. I would love for him to prove me wrong. Imagine a story like this with Aldo coming back at 37 and going on some crazy run to win the title. It could happen, but realistically, right now, at the time I'm recording this video, I don't think it happens. So it's kind of like, what's the point? Like, does he need the money? Like, it seemed like he was getting boxing opportunities. Like, I don't really know. So I kind of have mixed feelings about this. Like, I think Aldo will perform well. And I'll just say this right now. Like, my early pick on this fight with Martinez and Jose Aldo, I'm probably going to take Aldo, because it's not like his stand-up has deteriorated drastically. Like, he's still in there and doing boxing fights. I don't think Martinez is going to try and take this to the ground. Martinez is a stand-up guy himself. He's got and again, they both have good leg kicks. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one unfolds. But I just think, like, as far as who has to gain anything in this fight, Martinez has so much to gain here. Like, I think Jonathan Martinez, no offense, was kind of an afterthought in the division in terms of, like, if you think of some of the names that people talk about a lot, Umar, Corey Sandhagen, Merab, all these names, these are contenders. You haven't heard much about Martinez. You've heard maybe some suggestions about him fighting like Piotr Jan or something like that, but he's not really like a popular guy in the division. Aldo is Mr. Popular. He's a former champion. Everyone got excited when they heard Aldo was coming back. At least that's what I saw on social media. Martinez has everything to gain here. Aldo has everything to lose. Like, if Aldo had fought a Cruz or fought like a Cejudo or something like that, you know, they're two big names. It's like they're both getting something out of it. But the A side in this fight is Aldo, especially with it being in Brazil. So that's kind of how I look at this fight. Like, I don't think Aldo will be champion again. I think he can win this fight. I'm going to be picking him here. This is my early pick, but I will be obviously doing an early look preview on this as well and really digging into the stats and seeing that as well. But yeah, I just kind of view this as, yeah, it's kind of cool to see him back. Like I said, if he did 300 as like a one-off, that would have been more interesting here. But if he's actually like trying to go on a run here and try and win a title, I don't think it's going to go well. Especially like I think the timing's a bit too late. Like, if he had just come back even last year, I think maybe we could start talking a little bit more, but I don't know. Like, I think it's going to be very tough at 37 when you've got this division where you got a bunch of new killers that are really at the top of their game. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What was your initial reaction to hearing Aldo coming back? Were you surprised? Were you expecting this? That's the first thing I want to know. Second thing is, what do you think about the fact that this fight, I think, should have been on UFC 300? Don't you think this would have added more to that card? Not that it needs to add like a ton, but this is like more a UFC 300 fight, in my opinion, than a UFC 301 fight. You know, with the fact that like it was a bit of a surprise. I'm coming out of retirement, fighting on the card. What do you think of my suggestion for that? What do you think about Martinez as an opponent? Do you think this was the right move from that perspective? And lastly, who do you think wins the fight? Let me know in the comments. Let's debate this. Let's have some fun with this. And if there's any other topics you guys want me to discuss that's in the news right now, I always like hearing your feedback. I'm more than happy to do more of these videos when I get the time. It just so happens I have had some extra time as of late, so more than happy to do videos like that. But just let me know what you think in the comments. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @LynchOnSports. Before we leave, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.